Welcome, everyone, to today's episode. Today, we have a very exciting guest who made his own backdrop, by the way, so we can get into that. But for those of you who are just joining the podcast, I am Cara Baroni, founder of CB Consulting and specializing in SMBs, helping them reduce operational costs and improve efficiency with AI and my favorite, thought leadership. So if you would like a complimentary efficiency audit as you scale, please drop the word scale into the comments. But without further ado, welcome back to the future of learning, where you'll be hearing from thought leaders, founders, and true innovators just like Rajesh, really on the future of learning. So today we're diving into a topic that is so near and dear to my heart as a corporate woman turned entrepreneur. But the topic is how kids can start training their mind for future success using entrepreneurial skills. So welcome, Rajesh, to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
So let's dive in. Tell us your backstory. You have a really cool history, and we're actually from, well, I grew up in Massachusetts, and you were um,
I
a
grew up in
teacher
India.
many time, right? For at
Yeah.
MIT though.
Yeah. My background, I was born and brought up in a lower middle class family in a village in India. So the story started, I'll come back and connect back with this. So when I was a kid, I used to wonder how things worked. And my we had a transistor radio that died, and I had to take it to a local mechanic, repair guy, and he showed me what is inside a radio. And he showed me how to make a crystal radio with just two devices. And this is, 11, 10, 11, 12 years old or something. And that got me into uh, design. That got me. Then I studied physics and electrical engineering, and then product design and mechanical manufacturing engineering, and started four companies, designed over 100 products. Uh, so all through, and then then midlife crisis was to see how do you take a different turn in your life. So I went to MIT. Did my another master's there, and the whole research landed up I got a fellowship, and I was asked to design or create something for the developing countries, and that was primarily the fellowship from Mr. Ratan Tata. And so my goal was, how do you there were a billion other kids, who around the world who could have taken my path. And question is, how do you encourage them? How do you empower them? And how do you even transform them at the early age? And that became my research thesis at MIT. And so going back into my life, looking at how I transformed, creating things and solving problems and then becoming entrepreneurs, I created kind of a framework and started testing different parts with different kids to see how their mind changes, how their confidence changes, critical thinking, creativity, all those kind of things. And that became my research. So then went as founding faculty at a new business school that MIT started in Malaysia called Asia School of Business. So we were three of us who went from MIT, and we just started the school. Now it's one of the leading business schools in Asia. And there I continued my research, with schools and kids in all the ASEAN countries, and that became my work now. And at this point, I started off as a product designer, starting companies, manufacturing products. Now, primarily, transforming kids in their thinking, in their learning. Yeah, that is my short story.
I love that. What a background. And we talk a lot about skill sets and skill transformation on this podcast. So obviously you've acquired many, many skills to go from, just the exploring phase to developing,
Yeah, yeah.
teaching and then opening different schools of business and now your own business. So I'm curious if you were to say one, I know it's gonna be hard, but one skill that you've learned over the years that you really can attribute to your success today, what would that be?
So before that, let me, if I'll come to that.
Okay.
I have this theory. This is, when you will, once you hear it, you kind of will agree with me. I believe there are skill sets and there are mindsets. So skill set and mindset. Skill set is what you can teach. You know, I can teach someone to hammer a thing, or, pluck a guitar, or, all those kind of things, those skill sets that you can teach. Once you apply your skills and repeat over a time frame, then you start to realize certain things about yourself through the practice. And those are the mindsets. And it takes a little while for you to kind of start to develop that. Uh, so, mind skill sets are the things that are teachable. Mindsets are the things that are qualities that are realized through experience, and like, your empathy, critical thinking, and several other things. And if I were to look at, there are three, four primary things I can talk about. One is critical thinking, which is looking at a situation and can you analyze to find the problem. For an entrepreneur, that is absolutely the most critical thing, which is never taught in schools. Schools teach you, given a problem, can you find a solution? They don't teach you, given a situation, can you find the problem within? Uh, Second thing is self-learning skills. Given a thing, can you go find everything that there is need to be found, and can you learn new skills and connect all those skills? And then, uh, of course, creativity, storytelling, and I think systems thinking
Mm,
is systems thinking is one skill. If I were to put all these things, I would actually put, for an entrepreneur, systems thinking is one of the most critical things, because we think in little parallels, in verticals. I'm an electrical engineer, I'm a sales guy, I'm a finance major. Question is, can you think in terms of how things connect, how things flow. It could be flow of information, money, energy, all those kind of things, and what are the linkages, what are the obstructions, what are the delays and lags, and thinking in terms of systems is a way to take connect skills, basic skills that you teach into building something larger. And I would say, yeah, there are several. I can pick one
yeah.
out of five, and I would say systems thinking has been the one that kind of stands out as an entrepreneur. Can you think in terms of what is happening, not just happening in first order changes, and you think in terms of second order, third order
Mm,
changes, and that you can think in terms of what will happen to first response would be, but can you imagine what could be the second and third order kind of changes? Because we make decisions on first order changes, and can you even imagine those? So those are the kind of things I could say. Yeah. So self-learning skills and critical
yeah.
thinking, and all these things are very critical.
Yeah.
And they are not skills. They are
Mm.
again, a kind of mindsets, a kind of you learn with experience.
Yeah, I love that thinking of more, not so many such as skills, which will continue to evolve. Anyone can learn skills on the job, but
Yeah.
the mindset behind them, the critical thinking, the like engineering of things, the systems. So with that, I would love to hear about your company, Ncube. How long have you been around, and how are you helping kids at what age levels do that?
Oh, okay. So since my thesis was about how can you transform children and youth in underserved communities to become future innovators and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So I started with youth, training youth in, design, creativity. And I used to go there to take my 3D printers, electronics, and all these kind of things, and teach kids how to design and create things. And first thing they realize is that they can learn, because nobody actually, schools primarily teach things. They do not accelerate or kind of enable learning as much. They kind of, it's a broadcasting system. Teacher teaches, and how do you know you learned? Okay, so but learning can only be done through doing. So how do you take them through actual hands-on experiences where they start to learn what the theory means, what the concepts mean? So when you do those things, you start to build that confidence in your learning, your self-efficacy, your creativity, all those kind of things through practice. So This is then, can you teach them to think in terms of solving problems? Then, if you can create a solution with the product that you or the technology, whatever you created, can you commercialize it and monetize it? So you go from a maker to an innovator to an entrepreneur. So that was the primary path, and so we went and as part of the thesis. So you suddenly realize that by the time these kids reach college, they are damaged goods because the schools kill their confidence, kill their creativity because of the strict curriculum-based learning and theory-based learning. And they are primarily learning to write exams. And after your exams, do you really even internalize what you learn? Most of us no, most of us do not. So the learning is very little, and actually they're preparing for exam is what is primarily happening. So I decided the I need to go early in their life to school kids to build their confidence and creativity and critical thinking and all those things. So I created these programs and started teaching in schools, rural schools, and government schools in these developing world, uh, where they have not seen technology. There are schools that did not have computers, and you go there and teach them, and you realize in 2 days they can learn mm, CAD, and they can learn put together electronics, learn to write code, they start to create products, they learn to make movies. And because by themselves are exploratory, fearless learners. It's we adults who put those things because we do not believe the child can learn. So we kind of restricts what they learn. And this happens right through school. And finally, yeah, we kind of make it a reality that child cannot learn that because we did not teach them. But the moment you start to teach it, you start to bloom, okay, and blossom. So I started this program and I started teaching even when it became a professor at Asia School of Business, started doing all these things. Uh, I must have run about 140 over workshops in 12 countries for several thousand kids. And so after COVID, I left and came back, and I started NCube Labs, primarily taking the same work and continuing to do that. So for a few years, my focus primarily is in middle school kids. Early middle school is when they still haven't lost their courage, they still haven't lost their creativity, you know. And how do you, and primarily for girls, it's a very interesting, a girl grows up hearing 1,000 times that boys can do something better than girls, which is not true. But she starts to believe that, and once she believes that, it is very difficult to break her belief that you are as good as somebody else. And so the only way to address this is to engage very early in life while they
Yeah.
still haven't lost their courage. And so I started doing this for middle school kids, 12, 13, 7th grade, 8th grade, where you bring them together, teach them these things, make them do things, and make them realize they can learn. They go teach others, and they become the you know players in the school, and kind of get known and such. So currently in Cube Labs, we we do this all across the world, but our current focus is all in Japan.
Yeah. Why Japan?
Japan has Japan has serious issues that we still haven't recognized here yet. We are coming to we'll wake up to that very soon. In Japan, the population is aging. Median age is about 50, and general uh, reproductive rate or birth rate is less than almost about 1.2, which that means it's been declining. In the last 2024, they had a population in about a little less than a million less than before, almost a million less than the previous year. So population is declining really fast. The question is, they have a thriving GDP to maintain.
Yeah.
And where is all the skilled workforce going to come from 10 years from now? Though 10 years from now, the people who have to build the country is in middle school right now. And if you do not do, they cannot afford to lose even one kid, in dropout and disengagement. And so when I went to talk about these things, it really resonated there. And schools started asking me to come back and come and teach these kind of things there. And they have a very strict curriculum driven schooling system, and primarily in the government public schools. And there's a lot of disengagement. And second
Mm,
is English is almost 99% of the kids do not speak English,
right.
even though they have a subject called English, but it is very so. Lack of English actually you know worsens their confidence in engaging with people outside and such. So the question is, they need skills, they need English. So we created a program to teach English through technical skills. So they come together, learn all these things, mechanical design, electronics, coding, product design, all those design thinking, all those kind of things, but they engage in English. And so that they build their abilities in both, and
Wow.
so this is it's growing fairly well, and hopefully by next year we may have several schools that are adopting this whole program as a standard program and course in their schools.
That's incredible. To, so you've seen early on, get in front of them early on, which we all know, right?
Yeah.
Before we have to unlearn everything, like at my age. So I'm curious because there will be listening to this a lot of professors, institutions, or even teachers at potentially that age, or maybe even parents, right? I'm
Yeah.
curious, what would you you've kind of already started going over some of the myths, but can you go a little bit deeper in terms of what should people be thinking about at that middle school age where we're just taught to take standardized tests and learn a certain way? But if there's one thing that you could leave people with to like what you've seen to really increase confidence and critical skill, like critical thinking, that systems thinking you talked about, like
Yeah.
what would that look like? Where do you even start?
Yeah, it's so for a primary core of all these things would be project-based learning. They
Mm,
should do hands-on projects. If you're teaching the history of Viking in a history class, and physics teachers teaching buoyancy and how things, density and such, question is, can you bring together and say, can you create uh, ships that the Vikings used? Okay, so they need to go do their history research to understand what kind of materials were there and how far and far, although how much weight they carried, etc. And then go to the other side and see what kind of how to apply that to design something using buoyancy and physics. And they have to make something. By end of this thing, now they have a much better understanding of how the history happened, as well as the application of science. So
yeah,
this become a lot more engaging and closer to them, rather than two dry subjects that they learn on blackboard.
yeah,
Right now it is all chalk and talk. Right now question is, how do you make it into hands-on projects?
yeah.
So that's a project-based learning is first thing. And I like to call it STEAM rather than STEM, including arts in it, because there is no, you can't do anything without arts. And arts is what actually leads most of the thing. Technology follows. Technology makes artists' imagination uh, come to reality, but the imagination comes from art, and not from technology. Okay, so this is art is such a critical part of this. So it's not just teaching them STEM, uh, and then multidisciplinary learning. So it is not just you're a mechanical, physical designing of physical systems, like mechanical things, linkages, shapes, and volumes and such. Or other one is a software engineer; he can do coding and logic and such. So someone else can do electronic systems, or other one can do music, and somebody else can do something else. Question is, you need to learn all of them and see how do you connect all these things. So you're not trying to make a master at one single thing, but the reason is that first thing, most kids at that age really do not know what they really want because we have not exposed them to a lot of things.
Mhm.
You know, they primarily have seen a few things that their parents do and they say, okay, I like that. Fine, that is
Yeah.
perfectly fine. But the question is, have you been exposed to other things? So by creating these multidisciplinary uh, programs, hands-on project-based learning
Mm.
programs, they not just learn other things, they learn to learn other things. And that is where the is we're not actually teaching them everything. We just give them a little bit of a lead, and then they have to go figure out the things on their own.
Yeah.
And I adopted this style of teaching. I'm terribly ADHD. Suffered right through my schooling age because of never studied anything,
Yeah.
because I could not engage and all
Yeah.
those kind of things. And so when I started teaching, I brought in this concept of how do I teach a kid with ADHD? How do a kid teach me as a kid,
Mm.
who could not focus on anything that is predictable? If you kept going one, one, two, three, which is in a linear level, any linear scale, I would, you know, z- tune out halfway through because I know what is coming.
Yeah.
But you need to kind of keep changing things, keep challenging me. Uh, and so, which is true with almost most of the kids with learning disabilities like me. They need to be challenged, so
Hmm.
they engage. They have this thing to go learn because there is a challenge there. It is not just you're pushing down information down their throat. They have to go figure out things on their own. They need to fail. They create spaces where they can of controlled failures, so where they can fail without serious problems. You try things, you fail. I'm not saying they should get hurt or anything. I'm just saying they try things and they fail. It could be in software or coding or learning and whatever else. And the question is, do not help them. Encourage them to figure it out on their own.
Love
Give
that.
them
Mhm.
clues. The first time around, they'll find it difficult to do that. Second time, a little, they may need a little help. Third or fourth time, they build enough courage to believe that they can fix it.
Yeah.
And that is where they realize that they can go. That is the self-efficacy, building self-efficacy. So i- the whole process is reaching them early, as I said, project-based learning. I think schooling should start to revisit what they're teaching and what is the
Mm.
relevance of most of the things that they're teaching for today.
Yeah.
What cannot be learned on, we stopped teaching multiplication tables long back because there are calculators to do the same. We stopped teaching a lot of things which there are easier tools to do, to do exactly the same. Now the question is, in this day and age of AI and
That was
robotic
my next
search,
question, so keep going.
yeah, how do you in this age of chat GPT, if I ask them to write a piece of poem, I can write it in 2 seconds. Okay. Now the question is, what are we asking them to do? You cannot teach the exactly the same way from before. Uh,
Yeah. How do you
but
see that changing your methods, maybe even, but in general, like what's going to have to happen so people are actually employable in learning?
yeah. So when you talk about employability, every employer is looking for an employee who can learn
Yep.
beyond what is taught, or what else is needed. And second is, self-learning is a critical part of that we look for in any employee. Second is critical thinking. Given a problem, can you find really what the don't just do what I'm asking you to do. Can you figure out the problem yourself? Can you figure out the solution, test it out, and such? We want every employee to do that. Critical thinking is, the second part. Communication is a third part. Can you talk to others? Can you express your ideas? Can you work with others to create a solution together? Schools today create individual champions. They do not create, engaged teamwork. Everyone wants to be the top ranker and such, but you do not actually teach them how to work together in projects and such.
How do
Uh,
you see AI helping or hurting that?
oh, this is in all these cases, AI has a serious role to play, and we haven't fully figured out exactly how to do all these things. But if it, how do you use AI? First thing is that in creativity, if a student hands in an essay that you do not know if it is written by him or by
Hmm.
AI, how do you evaluate it? This is a problem teachers are facing. And I would say, okay, you wrote an essay, but tell me what it means. Explain to me, present to me what your concept is. Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter what you have written. I'm not even going to read that. Let me understand. If you have spent enough time to write something, you should be able to explain to me. If you cannot, that means, you haven't internalized what you have written. Because this is previously, uh, teachers used to correct on whatever was handed in, not what they really know. You know.
So do you think that the role of the classroom is going to have to change where people are demonstrating the knowledge?
Yes,
Because it's, yeah,
yes. You have to demonstrate what you have absorbed rather than what you present.
yeah,
So use AI as a tool for everything. No, AI is your new computer. AI is your new calculator. AI is
yeah,
your, new internet. Okay. So now the thing is, given this new tool, you cannot hide away from the tool because it is not possible. Question is, how do you embrace it? How do you utilize it for better learning? Okay. And I think today AI can, if I gave if I'm teaching, say, Newton's laws, it's okay. There is, I can teach as a physics teacher. I may be able to teach in one way that I understand, but that I don't want my student to be limited by what I know. I
yeah.
want my student to go find five different ways to think about Newton's laws, that I myself cannot understand. Okay, as a teacher. So
Hmm.
how do you encourage them to go figure this out? Uh, Come back and explain it to me in four different ways.
I love
You know,
that. So
you
it's
know,
using your method of hands-on critical thinking, but here are AI tools to actually self-learn, go do it,
yes,
and then we'll come back and you're going to regurgitate it to in your
yes,
way to make sure it's really sinking in.
right.
Yeah.
Come back and explain a new way of
I love that.
understanding this. So the tools are already there. They absolutely have the ability to learn. But the
Yeah.
question is, in yesterday's job of a teacher was to transfer information.
Yeah.
Today's job of a teacher is to create inspiration to
I
learn.
love that. Yeah.
And they need to be empowered to go learn these things on their own, not limit by what I know. And yesterday's teacher may kind of take offense saying, okay, oh my God, how do you control them? I need to, how do I look if they know more than I do? That means you're a great teacher. You have enabled your student to go learn a lot more than what you could teach. And we all have limited, and this again is one of the bottlenecks that I see in teaching what I teach in schools, because I go to my whole 2 days of courses, or all the courses I teach, I have close to about 15% of the time when I speak. Rest of the time they're actually working on projects.
Mm.
Okay. So and I tell them, if then half the time when they come back and ask me questions, I'll say, I do not know how to do this. Can you go find two, three ways of figuring it out? And I want them to go figure out. I'm absolutely willing to say I don't know any of these kind of things. And push them to go figure some of these things out. But most of us traditional teachers would have a hard time saying, I do not know my subject.
Yeah.
And that kind of limits a lot of things, where if I have to look like I am in control of the class, I know everything that the student has to learn, you are limiting what you're pouring into that cup,
Yes.
and
So it's some big mindset shifts happening
this
for
has to happen.
teachers as well. Yeah.
It is not yesterday's teaching system,
Yeah.
where when I was in school, this was very very long back. If I had a question in physics, or if I or math, I have two teachers in my whole school who could answer me,
Mm,
of which if each one of them may have one way of thinking, answering the question, because the way they were taught and they were teaching for so long. Uh, but today, using my phone, I can find 15 different professors from all the major universities explaining the same concept to me,
right,
you
right.
know? And
Talk to me a bit about, because I think that you talk so much about mindset shifts, but also it's really the path of unlearning. So if you don't reach people at those early years, the
yeah.
rest is the path of unlearning the ways, like the structured ways that you've learned it. And, when I started at, gosh, LinkedIn 11 years ago when I was there, it was a hard transition for me because I went from a very traditional corporate company where you are very rigid to very more entrepreneurial, like, here's the quota you have to hit, go figure it out.
Yeah.
And that was a hard process where so much, as you talked about for females, especially imposter syndrome comes up and you don't know what you're going to do and you're failing and failing fast. So you also work with leaders and executives. What does that process look like?
Oh, if you think college students, by the time they reach college, are already damaged goods, you should see working professionals and executives. As they grow into their companies, I see the innovation has been replaced by safety. Let me explain.
Mm,
Given a problem, uh, if I were to solve the problem, they would think of what has worked before, what others have done, and any one of them they would, So if you have a problem in a meeting, you have 5 minutes discussing the solution and 55 minutes figuring out how to implement the solution. So it should be exactly the opposite. You should be looking at 55 minutes, digging deep into the problem of coming up with all the existing solutions. Okay, then putting them away and now look for other ways of solving the problem, because those solutions were created with the tools they had 10 years back.
mm,
You have other tools now. How do you create a better solution for the same problem, and is faster, cheaper, more effective solutions? Uh, but when you're talking about working professionals, they rather say something which would work, so there are the fear of failure is so much higher in corporations than in the 9-year-olds. Okay, because 9-year-olds, children don't have the concept of failure. For them, I tried this, this worked and this did not work, so I'm going to try this again, and it is a question of learning. It worked or not worked. But the moment you are in a professional level, not work means you failed. Work means you succeeded. So you have a much larger baggage that you're carrying, where you cannot afford to fail, because it's not just a matter of you experimented and the experiment said this will not work. Your failure of an experiment, failure of a project is a failure of a person at that point, rather than so they
yeah.
always would narrow down on the safest solution and then keep moving ahead and breaking this. And over time it becomes a condition. They've been so
Right.
conditioned to come up with what has worked before and adopt it, so that we know that success would be high, even though it may or may not be the most effective solution. And and for that, we need to start to break that fear of failure, bring in the creativity. And creativity is also, you know about George, I think George Land, his experiment. I believe he was a psychiatrist who did creativity tests for NASA for picking the best employees or something. So he ran this creativity experiments on 5-year-olds, and found that almost about 98% of them had the creativity index. And they tried the same experiment on the same kids when they were 10 years old, and it had come down to 34%. And at 12 years, it had come to about, for 20% or something like that, or age 15, it had dropped down to 12%. And adults have a creativity index of 2%. Okay. So what it means is that a child has the ability to think there's no restrictions in thinking, because restrictions are artificial constructs that are created by adults because of their fears and experiments and experiences. Question is, how do you teach an adult to think beyond those walls that you have
Mm.
created around you?
So you really help them notice the patterns, embrace failing faster, and infusing creativity into their organization.
Yeah. And
Oh.
when I talk to the CEOs, I did this for several companies, and when they say, "Can you bring in innovation into the company?" I said, "Yes, but I have two asks that I have for you. One is you need to create a critical mass of people in your company who are willing to think differently.
Mm.
Because if one guy comes up with a crazy idea, everyone else is going to beat him back to shape. Okay, so but if you have a critical mass of people who can think differently,
Yeah.
they can try different things and encourage each other. Second is you need to be patient with their failures. They're going to try
Mm.
something new,
Yeah.
and they most probably they're going to fail, and if you raise your voice, they're going to go back to the safe ways of doing things before you. There
Mm.
goes your innovation.
Yeah.
And They said yes, and we ran programs like that for airlines and software companies and
Very
telecom
cool.
companies in Asia for several years. I ran multiple programs for corporate training. So yes, that's where so school kids, you're preparing school kids because someday they're going to be in corporate world where they can be productive. But what about the people in corporate world right now? And
Yeah.
they need this thing so that they can make a much larger impact of the workings of the company today than school kids, today. School
Yeah.
kids, of course, in
Yeah.
10 years or 15 years, they may get there.
I
Uh,
love it. So
yeah.
it's breaking the mold, not only when they're young, but helping us to reimagine innovation and infuse that to think differently from a personal standpoint, from a company standpoint, from an economic standpoint.
Yes.
So I'm curious, where do you see your company going over the next 1 to 2 years?
So, I believe in this problem, and I believe this problem is real. And you know, the world is going in the other direction with today's tools and distractions that we have.
Mm,
Uh, we are not actually creating tomorrow's problem solvers as much as before because there's so much more distractions today. Your screen time is, alone is just an indication of that,
yeah,
of how much time are you spending on learning and such. So this is a increasing problem, especially education system, especially in the US right now. It has become a political, mudsling.
yeah,
Okay, so the people who are really suffering are tomorrow's youth who are in school today. Okay, they badly need these kind of experiences and learning. Uh, so it is and I truly believe this can actually make a difference because 12 years of research at MIT and Asia School of Business and through Cube Labs, I'm absolutely convinced that you can transform kids and change them. And I'm looking for, you know, people like what's happening in Japan, people who have realized that they have a problem. You can only treat a patient who want to be treated. you
yeah,
know
yeah,
and so it is. So in some cases it may be a little too late. In some cases people may have recognized the need early,
yeah.
then it gets easier to fix.
Yeah. So you see the problem consistent. So you will be there to add the solution to Japan and other countries.
Other countries, yes.
Yeah. All right, final question for you. You kind of hit on this, but I ask everyone because with the rise of AI and lack of that human interaction, and especially for someone like you who is juggling a million different things. I know last time you talked, you were just
Yeah.
flying back, I think, from Asia, and you have so much going on. What is the number one way that you prevent burnout and manage your energy?
Oh, I work a lot of hours a day.
Yeah,
And the thing is, work is a word which we kind of associate with when you're doing something for somebody else. When you're doing for yourself, You do not look at it that way. So, you know, yeah, parenting is a lot of work, but you want to do it.
Mm.
Okay. So because there is you can see why you're doing it. So in my case, I know exactly why I'm doing this, and I'm willing to put all the time and effort, and I enjoy doing it. So, sometimes I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. First thing I do is pick up my laptop and continue the work that I started the previous night while I fell asleep on my computer. Okay, and not because I want to push anything away, but I really want to make this impact happen. So, if you can align what you really want to do and what you're good at and what you do,
Yeah.
mm, then it becomes so much easier.
I love that. I love that. So it's really being connected to your why, and then it doesn't feel like work. It's more of a
Yeah.
flow state, something that gives you energy versus takes it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I work late, I wake up early in the morning, do this, and,
Yeah.
I do all those things, and because you know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And as long as you know why you're doing it and you're driven by that,
Yeah.
that gives you so much power. Yeah.
Wonderful. For listeners who want to learn more about your company and connect with you directly, where should they go?
Oh, my ncube.co, encube.co. Ncube stands for Entrepreneurship Incubation. Ncube Labs is
Oh,
the name of the company. It stands for Entrepreneurship Incubation Labs because I believe most of the places were trying to create startups. Entrepreneurs were part of the game, but the outcome they want was startups. It is like we want, you know, rock stars, but we're not willing to invest in music lessons. Okay, it is
yeah.
like that is the way I say. We all want startups, but we need to train kids to become innovators and entrepreneurs. So I said our
Beautiful.
focus is just creating innovate entrepreneurs. They can be entrepreneurs in different ways. They could
Mm-hmm.
be a great employee who can lead a project within a company. They could be go out and start a company, or they could be any of those things. But how do you build their creativity and drive and agency and and such? They could take on different path. So
Wonderful.
and so that is what drives me.
Great. I love it. So ncube.co if you want to connect
Yes,
with Rajesh and all of the amazing things that he is doing in the early stage classroom or even at the leadership level. So Rajesh, a big thank you to you for joining us today. And if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who's looking to stay on the cutting edge of learning. Until next time, we are signing off. Bye bye for
wonderful,
now.
wonderful. Yeah, take care.